The Habs make a significant roster move as defenseman Nicolas Beaudin has been waived for the purpose of contract termination, and that has a lot of impact on Laval's decor moving forward. Plus, we got to talk about a new report linking Sean Monahan to the Leafs, saying that it's maybe the best destination for him. We also got a nice little note on Juraj Slafkovsky, all coming up on this episode of Habs Digest. Jesse, let's dive in first to the Nicolas Beaudin stuff, and he's gone. He's cut. Now, do you guys know Nicolas Beaudin? Well, if you don't, we're about to remind you who he is. So they placed Beaudin on unconditional waivers for the purpose of terminating his contract following a mutual agreement. Now, Nicolas Beaudin was a former first-round pick, 27th overall in the 2018 draft of the Chicago Blackhawks, and he wanted out of Chicago and out of Rockford so he would get some more ice time. And he found a home in Laval, where he had a really good last season, where he put up 25 points in like over 30 games. This season, 6 points in 16, but now he's gone. And Jesse, I think Nicolas Beaudin he has a lot of skill. He has really shown that he has a ton of skill. He had a fantastic season points-wise last year, but he was waived now. So this, to me, reveals a lot about the Montreal Canadiens and Laval Rocket plan of how they plan to use Hudson and Reinbacher when they come over, because they're down to only 7 defensemen and down to just 3 left-handed guys with the loss of Beaudin. Does this to you kind of say the same thing as it does to me? Is like, well, you know what? We're really going to focus on our own homegrown guys.
That's it, and as the season is ticking on, right, that we're going to need to make some space for some young defensemen really quick. But it's absolutely it. This is a move by Kent Hughes where he's really showing that we want to put the emphasis on certain players as being key foundational pillars of this team. And unfortunately, Nicolas Beaudin just wasn't a part of that. And, all the same, in his brief time, even when he came up with the Habs, kind of playing pretty well, right? Kind of that offensive defenseman, didn't have these terrible outings. Unfortunately, just wasn't able to kind of really cement his spot with the Habs or unfortunately the Laval Rocket. It's more of a thing of not so much Nicolas Beaudin being a bad defenseman in any type of way, but us as having these key guys that we know we're going to need to make space for really quick. Now, we know Hudson, Kent Hughes has already said that he's going to be joining the club as of the end of this year, right? As soon as the NCAA season finishes. So whether that's with Montreal or with Laval, like we're having to make some spots. There's even news of Reinbacher maybe coming sooner than later. So it's really beckoning the question of like, what's the next move for Kent Hughes here?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that they could do, right? And it seems to me that if Hudson's coming into Laval, they'll probably run, I guess, Norlinder, Galipeau, and Hudson, although there's another left-handed defenseman, I forget his name at the moment, but a guy from Quebec, Timony, something like that. But still, really, really interesting stuff. And again, I thought Beaudin had good upside. It's not like he's just some scrub prospect or anything. He's 24. He's a former first-round pick. So it's like, it made me scratch my head a little bit. But then I think I realized, like, Kent Hughes has a plan. And they're going to need to make room. This is just step one. This is step one of really clearing out the decor, whether it's in Montreal or Laval, so that they can have a nice funnel, maybe bring up some guys when the NHL guys are traded, fit in Hudson and Reinbacher. They need to make space. And I guess this is just the first domino to fall in that eventual wave of moves before the trade deadline. But let's get into the second topic, and I want to talk a bit about Slafkovsky. And of course, Slafkovsky had a phenomenal game against the Pittsburgh Penguins. Not only did he score on what was going to be a pretty sick backdoor pass to Caufield, let's be honest, he also, in overtime, spun away from Sidney Crosby, dangled around Chris Letang, and barely getting stopped at the doorstep for the game winner in overtime. He is phenomenal. And there was an article that came out talking about how Juraj Slafkovsky has really been able to drive his own line, and how a lot of Habs fans, they don't want to see Josh Anderson on that top line anymore. We know it doesn't work. It hasn't worked. It's still not working. But they want Slav. And a most important takeaway has emerged because Juraj Slafkovsky, the player that most fans would prefer to be seeing in Anderson's place, is proving that he can be a play driver on any trio they put him on. And that's really true. If you look at the stats when he was skating with Monahan and Armia, he continued to do things that made him successful during his time on the top line. And his line was the team's best at even strength. The only line to have a positive shot attempt share at 53%. They led the team in expected goal share, 54%. Far cry from the team's mark of 42%. Of course, Armia and Monahan were playing well, but Jesse, Juraj Slafkovsky has been doing some insane stuff recently. We thought that like moving him off the first line was a demotion, but I think this is really a moment where he's showing everyone that, like, nah, I'm the guy. I can really drive my own line. Like, yes, Monahan and Armia are great, but like some of the strides he's taken to maybe try and prove himself a bit more have been phenomenal.
It's so true. And as this article very definitely says, is that Juraj Slafkovsky, he's not dependent on Cole Caufield and Nick Suzuki for success. And I think that's amazing. not know that, okay, the success he's having right now is an aberration, but this is a guy that can really make it happen for his own line, right? And so nice to see. Maybe that's kind of part of giving some secondary sort of scoring, maybe a little bit of tough love from Marty St. Louis, but also a way of kind of opening up some secondary scoring, leaving a little bit of pressure off of Nick and Cole on that top line there. But for me, I don't see a coincidence at all, Josh, between the Montreal Canadiens power play being better and Juraj Slafkovsky joining the power play. I see a direct correlation between those two things. It was kind of stagnating at the beginning of the year. We were kind of calling for Juraj Slafkovsky to get put there, and he did. And we've seen that the power play has been one of the positive things for this team this year. It's a point where really I feel like Juraj Slafkovsky in a lot of ways doesn't even know himself how talented he is. He's only starting to realize it. And as he's realizing, it's showing on the ice in the way that he's carrying the puck up the zone and just looking so comfortable with his stick handling and his puck carrying abilities and everything else. Like there was a couple times last night where he could have scored again after already scoring one goal. He then had multiple scoring chances, right? To win the game, to tie the game, everything, right? He's in a lot of ways being our most dominant player, right? And it's just as he learns to just kind of develop these things, I think we're going to see that more and more. And as Juraj Slafkovsky develops that confidence in himself and realizes, I can do this. I can take over a game. I can control his shift. I can have my way on the ice. We're going to see that that's going to bode really well for the Montreal Canadiens' future.
Yeah, for sure. This confidence he has now of just like taking the puck, spinning away from someone and just rushing up the ice. It's something we're seeing a lot more recently. And I think he's really, like you said, he's starting to realize how good he is. And when he makes a good play, you can tell he knows he made a good play. When he scores a goal after a sick play or he makes a sick pass, he's like, oh yeah, like you can see it on his face. And again, look, a lot of you guys love Slafkovsky. We know that. I have some Leafs fans as friends, and they are saying in group chats and stuff like, hey, you know what? Slav's been really impressing me as of late. And he's impressing everyone because people are saying, like, he finally knows how to use his size and his speed and his strength. It's really paying off, and I love what I'm seeing from him. The last thing we got to talk about, Jesse, is one of his line mates, Sean Monahan, and, he was linked to the Toronto Maple Leafs again. Now, obviously, Monahan is one of the top trade targets in the NHL, and a recent article talking about 3 Maple Leafs trade targets from the Senators-Canadiens game from the Hockey Writers and Andrew Forbes, they talk a bit about Sean Monahan. He says it's another player to be rumored to be on the block, on the verge of being 30, had a bounce-back season, 13 goals, 34 points in 48 games so far this season. I believe it actually might be 35. I could be wrong, not sure. His highest offensive total since 2019-20 with the Calgary Flames. And but then you got the Marc-Olivier Beaudoin kind of tweets like, well, here's another debate. Like, do we keep him or do we trade him? You know, he's only $2 million. It's something that would really, really fit on the Maple Leafs roster. They'd have to pay probably a significant price. He's going to cost more than the likes of someone like Matthew Joseph on the Ottawa Senators that was also mentioned in this article. Jesse, I think a lot of teams would love Sean Monahan, but I think the fact he's going to be a free agent at the end of this year, and this is kind of maybe his last chance to really go after a big contract, do you think that's maybe shying some teams away? And also maybe how much the Habs are going to be asking for him because of his production? I feel like he's just in such a weird spot with his injury history, with his great contract now, potentially bigger, worse contract at the summer. I feel like the situation just gets more complex every single day.
Oh, for sure. You know, that's it. Like this trade would hurt. And just the fact that, you know, so many Habs fans are starting to want to keep him, but just the fact that it would go to the Leafs, right, would hurt so much more. But you have to see why there were some scouts from the Leafs, you know, just watching him have a great game just the other night, right? This is the type of player that would just help the Leafs in the exact way that they need help, which is in the playoffs, obviously. We know Sean Monahan just being that all-around player, like it would just make so much sense for their team, right? Would just be a stabilizing force, you know, just have that responsible 200-foot, you know, player, right? And we're not trying to put any shade, but obviously would be an amazing addition, you know, to that Maple Leafs team, right? So we can definitely see why so many people are interested. Like this is his best year in 5 years, right? So I definitely feel like, you know, if we're gonna sell high, we definitely need to get our value back. But like the big caveat in all this is gonna be, it's like, how does Sean Monahan feel about this? How does the man feel? Like, does he want to stay in Montreal? Is he liking it here? Does he see a future here? Does he want to go somewhere else? Because I feel like as much as other teams are really interested, he's at the point of his career right now where he can really call the shots. He can decide where he wants to go. And that's such an amazing story, right? Of him kind of being a castaway, for lack of a better term, from the Calgary Flames to now kind of being sought after by so many NHL teams. Like if you're Sean Monahan, that has to feel good, right? When maybe one team, kind of gave up on you, and now so many other GMs are realizing just how valuable you are, right? So I think Kent Hughes fully realizes that, and we're going to want to get our value back in any type of trade. Obviously, I feel like it's a win-win in so many different types of ways, just with his play, the favor that he's done. He's already done so much of this in terms of first-round picks. We could get more here at the draft, but if we end up keeping him, that's definitely a win in my opinion too. So I mean, we have to be thankful to Sean Monahan.
Yeah, it all depends on how much he would ask for in free agency or in an extension as well, and we might talk about that in a video coming very, very soon. But you got to think there's not just one team, the Montreal Canadiens, who are going to want him after this season. I think pretty much every team's going to want him. A guy with this kind of production, like again, his best in years. I know he has an injury history, but it feels like he's finally turned that corner. I mean, knock on wood, hope it doesn't, he doesn't get hurt again, but like the production he's had, the impact he's had on the locker room, it seems like he's such a good guy as well. He's always smiling with his teammates. It seems like he's just genuinely loved around the organization. And we know that Kent Hughes and him clearly have a pretty good relationship. But I think the big thing at the end of the day, Jesse, is Kent Hughes is going to do what's best for the Montreal Canadiens. And I know this is rare, and I know you said, you were talking before the show, we were kind of like, well, this is probably not going to happen because it never happens. Part of me is kind of hoping that if Monahan does get moved, the Canadiens circle back around and say, hey, we can offer you a contract in free agency. However much it is, we're not sure. Would he accept the Habs offer if another team offers him more? Not sure, but at the end of the day, like we said, we trust Kent Hughes, hope he does what's best for the Montreal Canadiens, and I guess that's all we can ask for. But that'll do it for this episode of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. We're on the road to 15,000 subscribers, and if you guys could help us out with that goal, we'd really appreciate it. I'm Josh Gosse, my co-host Jesse Poirier. We'll catch you in the next one.